Zeke Yeager's euthanasia plan is really one of the most fascinating parts of AOT in my opinion, and I talk about why in my grand review of the final arc. However, what's easy to forget sometimes is how complex the whole thing really was, because he wasn't just trying to have Eren sterilize everyone then end it all. He also had a whole plan to have Yelena and her soldiers contact Paradis, make Kiyomi contact Paradis soon after, give a fake plan to them, relay his real plan to Eren, meet up in Marley, manipulate Marley to try to go for Paradis ASAP, then attack Liberio in order to turn the world against Paradis, and then once he's locked up in Paradis, he uses the wine to take over the government, meet Eren, then activate euthanasia, and then finally activate a partial rumbling to crush the allied fleet and keep Paradis safe for a while. So really, that's a lot. He is one of the smartest strategizers in the series, so not entirely surprising. But what's even crazier is that all of this was only his plan B. His plan A is what we see in the Battle of Shiganshina, and it's, well, we don't really know. He was clearly gunning for victory. He was trying to capture Eren alongside the warriors, but we don't know how exactly he expected to do euthanasia from there. And that's what I'm trying to find out today. This video is different from my other videos in that it's less of an analysis of the characters and themes and more so speculation of what this guy had planned during the battle. So for the sake of the hypothetical, let's say everything goes smoothly for Zeke. He and Bertolt kill the horses, Eren's squad is dead, and now the scouts are stranded in Shiganshina. If Eren tries to escape on his Titan form, then Zeke, Bert, and Reiner and the Titans are blocking his retreat. This essentially forces the scouts to stay inside and starve out. Reiner and Bert can even speed up this process by fighting and exhausting Eren. So let's say the battle is completely won, the warriors grab up a very weak Eren, and they are now on their way. Obviously, Zeke can't hold on to Eren himself. If they touch, then the founder will be activated, and it's far too soon for that. This is why I think it would be Peak's job to hold on to Eren. Even if Reiner and Bertolt are alive, they'd likely be exhausted from the battle, and carrying is more so Peak's strength anyway. So now the question arises, is this when Zeke takes action? From his POV, only Eren himself can decide to activate euthanasia. Of course, in canon, Zeke ended up being the one in control, but he didn't know he would at the time, and that was very situational because the only reason this was possible was due to the fact that Eren needed a lot of healing, which gave Zeke time to find a way to somehow conveniently destroy the vow. Weird, but whatever. Point being, even in this scenario, Zeke needs to convince Eren to activate euthanasia in some way, which is hard because he is Eren's open enemy here. So maybe in order to gain Eren's trust, Zeke rescues him from the warriors, fights them off, then, all without touching him, talks to him about euthanasia and somehow convinces him. Or he actually waits until Eren is captured in Marley, then as Marley is trying to find someone to pass the Founding Titan onto, Zeke rescues Eren to gain his trust and then convinces him to do euthanasia. Or instead of rescuing him first, Zeke instead offers to rescue him if and only if Eren does euthanasia. We're going to extremely deep hypotheticals here, but stay with me for a second, because all of these options have their pros and cons. If he executes the plan while the warriors are headed to the port, then he'll have to do a 3v1. Granted, it's entirely possible that it'll actually be a 2v1 or a 1v1, and it's also most likely that Reiner and Bert would be far more exhausted than Zeke, but it's not like Zeke knows that before starting the battle. The best case scenario is that he just had to eliminate Peak, but he logically have to account for the worst case scenario of having to fight 3 different people and all without killing or touching Eren. So maybe he planned the other option. Maybe he's going to make this move once Eren is in chains within Marley. This does come with its own problems though. Like, Zeke would have to make sure nobody else is in the room with him as he's talking to Eren. He'd also have to make sure Marley is going to spend at least a little while before finding someone who's fit for the Founding Titan. Plus, there's also concerns for stuff like listening devices. However, it's entirely possible that these won't be much of an issue. We know Zeke has a lot of pull inside Marley. After all, he was the one who made them redirect the focus back onto Paradis. I think it's also likely he'd find some way to make sure the room's empty, not being listened to, and also find an excuse to delay the process to find a candidate. Maybe he'd say he wants to interrogate Eren alone in order to find out more information, since Marley would possibly like to learn more details about how the founder works. Of course, there's still the issue of listening devices, but I trust Zeke. I trust the Wonder Boy. I think he'd find some way around that. The thing is, there's enough details and variables that are totally in the dark to the point where I can sort of give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that he has some way around it. On the other hand, the alternative, i.e. fighting the warriors on their way back, I think we know enough to know that it probably wouldn't work out. The only way I can think of is if maybe the ship that the warriors will use to go back home will actually be piloted by someone under Yelena's command, someone working for Zeke, and that person will bring the ship to some weird isolated area where Eren can be grabbed and the warriors can be neutralized. I don't know. Chances are there's a ton of possibilities I'm not considering, so comment down what you think Zeke had planned. Which do you think is most likely? Personally, the plan with the ship would be cool, but I imagine it would be hard for Zeke to decide who exactly pilots it. I don't think he'd have that much influence. But Okay, so if Eren is chained up in Marley and Zeke is talking to him, what now? I don't think Zeke would rescue Eren. I doubt he'd want to do a whole prison break movie against Marley, all without touching Eren, which is why I think he'd take the carrot and stick approach. He'd offer Eren's release in exchange for the euthanasia plan. Now to find out what'll happen here, we need to talk about his plan B for a bit, because I think it's really noteworthy how much Zeke does for the sake of making sure Paradis lives in peace for 100 years before dying of old age. Like the whole reason he has Marley focus on Paradis and attacks Liberia is to ensure that the world gathers their armies ASAP so that any of Paradis' potential enemies can be crushed before his term runs out. He risks his life multiple times and thus risks the entire euthanasia plan in order to protect Paradis. After all, if he never cared to protect Paradis, then he and Eren could have just shaken their hand in Marley and it would have been over. But they clearly had a lot more to do than just sterilizing everyone, so they might as well just do those things first and then sterilize everybody once they've built up more trust. My point being, while it's not his primary objective, protecting Paradis is still clearly something Zeke would like to do. Yet here, in his plan A, he doesn't have that luxury. He can't gather the whole world against Paradis, then crush them with a partial rumbling. He can't do another Liberia attack. He can't make sure that Paradis has a founder for 100 years for deterrence. Yet plan A is somehow still his first plan, so clearly despite lacking this huge advantage, he thinks it's preferable to the canon plan. This tells us that his plan A has some sort of benefit that his plan B doesn't have. If I had to guess, that benefit would have something to do with insurance. In canon, Zeke definitely had a lot of biases that blinded him and made him think Eren believed in the euthanasia plan, but he's not a complete caricature. A part of him still had some doubt that Eren genuinely believed in his plan, hence why he felt the need to test Eren once they were in paths. So maybe that's the big downside that plan B has that plan A doesn't have. Maybe for plan A, Zeke doesn't need to trust Eren as much. I think that's further evidence that Zeke would do something along the lines of offering Eren freedom. Obviously though, some baseless bribery wouldn't be enough. Eren wouldn't know if Zeke actually could save him, plus I doubt Eren would accept anyway. Zeke would also have to combine it with some deception too. In canon, Eren knew everything about the outside world. Here though, Zeke has a monopoly on information. He knows everything about the world and Eren knows virtually nothing. It's entirely possible he can trick Eren into doing the euthanasia plan. Now, I'm not entirely sure how it works. If Eren says sterilize all Eldians, but he doesn't know what the Eldians actually are and is told it's just a term referring to Marley's army of shifters, would Ymir sterilize the shifters, or would she act based on her understanding of what Eren's message means? Would she actually sterilize the Eldians? Only she knows, I guess, but if she does only go by her interpretation of what he means by Eldian, then that's an easy win for Zeke. He could just give Eren a more BS explanation of what the term Eldian means. But even if she did, there's no way Zeke would know that, so I doubt that was actually in his plans. So maybe he'd make up some story about how every time an Eldian reproduces, that, turns one other Eldian into a Titan or whatever. Maybe he'd say this is why Marley is after Paradis and that doing this would get Marley off of Paradis' back in a more peaceful way. So there's some implicit coercion there. I'm really grasping at straws here, but I think Zeke would take advantage of the information imbalance here and make something up. Why else would this be his preferred plan? But I feel like regardless of whatever he comes up with, he would be held back by his emotions. He would be caught up in his desire to have someone relate to him and his struggles. Of course, this isn't to say he's incapable of looking past that. Again, he did have his doubts in the series, is still at least partially holding back regardless. I also doubt Eren would do whatever Zeke asks him to. In that case, if Eren is given the power of the founder and decides to betray Zeke last minute like he did in canon, I wonder what he would decide to do with the limited information he had. Maybe he would somehow cave in and latch onto this as his only possible plan for salvation. Not exactly in character for Eren, but with enough deception and pressure, anybody can be pushed into doing anything. It's a big point of the series, really. So who knows? If Zeke won the Battle of Shiganshina, either he would succeed or Marley would succeed, or somehow Eren would do something with a potential momentary power over the founder to turn the tides around for Paradis. I really doubt that last one though, personally. While that's how I see Zeke's plan A, I think there's a lot to discuss with his plan B as well. It's not like he succeeded, there's a lot more to it that we didn't see. A bit of a side note, but this is why I think the warriors never destroyed the basement before the Battle of Shiganshina. There's some short-term tactical reasons for sure, like preferring to spend time preparing for the ambush instead of finding the basement, or not wanting to risk the scouts seeing the basement destroyed and thus giving Eren less reason to stay. But I think Zeke's influence is crucial too. If Reiner and Bertolt see the basement, then they'll learn he has royal blood and Zeke will be done for. However, there's also the fact that the scouts have knowledge knowledge of the outside world is necessary for his plan B. Things will go a lot smoother if everyone already knows about the outside world. He can send Yelena and Kiyomi, he can convince Eren more easily, he can offer the 50-year plan, etc. So it makes sense why he probably used his position as captain to make sure the basement stays intact. But in terms of stuff we don't know, there are also some major gaps in terms of what would happen after Zeke sterilizes everybody. We get some hints about how he plans to protect Paradise after. Yelena alludes to using Historia's kid to inherit the Beast Titan, so we can infer that the plan is to pass around the Beast Titan across random people for 100 years, and then if the founder ever needs to be used to protect Paradise, Historia's kid can inherit the Beast Titan and the founder can make contact with them. This is honestly really dumb in my opinion, because the much simpler solution is to just turn Historia's kid into a pure Titan. It is very cruel and immoral, but it's far more practical. It means you can keep a royal Titan around for 100 years without having to pass on the Beast Titan to like a million people, and without the royal Titan having to die 13 years after inheriting it. Plus it makes assassination near impossible. They just need to encase the Titan around Titan hardening and leave only one small part open for the founder to touch once they need to. However, there's another big concern from Zeke's POV, and that's whether the future founder inheritors would believe in Zeke's euthanasia plan. There'd be at least 7 or 8 founder successors within this time span, and it's highly unlikely that not a single one of them would try to reverse the sterilization. I know Zeke really wants to believe that people would sympathize with this cause, but I don't think he's so stupid as to trust a random founder he doesn't know 80 years later. That's why my headcanon is that Zeke would have Eren implement something similar to what Karl Fritz did. He'd have a vow in the same way to make sure that every founder could not reverse the sterilization, the same way Karl Fritz forced his successors to be pacifists. I also find this thematically cool because of all the parallels the series draws between Zeke and Fritz. In this scenario, both would be using the vow in order to force Eldian submission. I wonder how this would work in the scenario where Eren fails to convince Ymir, because here, Eren has already made his treason clear and he wouldn't be controlling the founder in this scenario. So I wonder if Zeke could set up the vow himself without using Eren now that Ymir is listening to him instead. It's also concerning how much Paradise would really suffer during these 100 years. Within 50 or 60 years, the entire country would just be several 100,000 old people. The economy would be demolished, there'd probably be severe malnutrition. I really don't think there could be any solution to this. I guess the deaths wouldn't be as peaceful as Zeke makes them out to be. But really, who knows? What do you think Zeke might do? Do you think the volunteers might implement some sort of mass immigration program for people from Hizuru to Paradise? I wonder why anyone would want to leave their home country for such an underdeveloped country that's literally at war. I guess there's a million ways it could go. Yelena herself did say there's no such thing as guarantees. So what do you think would have happened if Zeke succeeded? Do you agree with his plans? We can talk about it in the comments below. I feel like AOT encourages far more discussion than the average series. If you'd like to support my channel and gain access to some cool perks, feel free to become a member. I promise you won't regret it. Thanks for watching.